Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 5.50, and in this lesson we're going to talk about how we can create our own vowel, aka Formant filter, using just the EQ5 and the polysynth. And specifically we're just using the EQ5, just so happens that the polysynth is what our source for the audio is going to be. And these Formant filters, they've become very popular in EDM over the past 5 or 6 years. And the underlying principle is actually very, very simple. And I'm going to use the human voice as an example. So obviously we have our vocal cords, and the human voice itself, the throat, is a resonating body. And we change the shape of our mouth and also other things in our throat in the process of singing in order to make particular vowel sounds, in order to make vowels and consonants, right? So you've all done those things when you were kids where it's like, close your mouth and try to make this sound, and you can't do it and you get all frustrated. But that has to do with just the complexity of the human voice and the vocal cords and all of the processes which allow us to make sounds. So if I try to go, ah, that's a very, very specific way that I have to shape my lips, my vocal cords, everything else in order to get that sound. But at the end of that, what we could do is we could spectrally analyze me singing that ah and see that there are certain resonant peaks that pop up on the frequency spectrum. And so if I use those peaks, I could then create my own Formant filter to try to replicate that. And that's really all Formant and vowel filters are. And lucky for us, the University of Chicago has decided to give us a whole entire Formant table. And this table is letting us know where those resonant frequencies are that we have to try to hype in order to recreate that sound. So there's a tenor ah, a tenor e, a tenor I, a tenor o, tenor u, and then bass, alto, soprano. They even go to countertenor, very interesting down there. And this is for a class for the University of Chicago using C Sound. Anyone who's interested in C Sound, feel free to do some research into it. It's a programming language, and I can guarantee you anybody who's in that class right now would probably prefer to be doing what we're doing right now as opposed to using these values inside of code. It's just not as fulfilling as what we can do. So I've copied down these values here, and I'm going to explain how you read this table. So this is saying frequency 1, frequency 2, frequency 3, frequency 4, frequency 5. And we can kind of think about this as like various harmonics with each one being less hyped. So the 650, we're saying an amplitude of 0 dB, but we're also just saying this is the one that's going to be the loudest. And here's where we have bandwidth or resonance. So it's going to have the widest bandwidth at 650, and that's going to be our peak. That's where we want it to be the loudest. Then we go up to 1080, 2650, 2900, and 3250. And we're just going to use bell filters and try to follow these basic guidelines. And you can do this for any of these vowels, any of these octave ranges if you want. And we'll just go through one of them pretty quickly. I'm going to add an FX chain first, just because I want to add an FX chain. And then I'm going to put the EQ5 on here. I'm going to change all of these to bells. And I'm going to start by typing in my frequencies. So we had 650, and then we had 1080, and then we had 2650, then we had 2900, and then we had 3250, I believe. Okay, and now I'm going to just start to kind of follow those basic directions that we had before. And let's take a listen to our sound without any filtering. And now starting to utilize our Formant filter. So I'll just go ahead, peak that one out at the top. And then narrow the Q a little bit. Here's what we had before. And after. Now let's add in our second. So this one's not going to be quite as loud. I'll put it up to plus 18, so literally minus 6. Probably just type that in, eh? And let's sharpen this up. Now we want this to be sharper than 2.4, so we'll go close to 3. And now take a listen to this. We're already pretty much there, right? You can start to hear that ah coming through. Next up, we have 2650. That's supposed to be -7, so I could put that at 17. I'm going to put it at 16, I think, and sharpen this up higher than 3. Perfect. All right, and now 2.9K. That's supposedly going to be -8, but I'm going to actually go with 14 here, I think. And I'm going to bring this up to something around 4. Perfect. And then last but not least, we're going to go up here. What does that say? I can't even read. I think this one's much less. So I'm only going to add like maybe 4 dB. And then I'm going to really spike this one. So that's pretty freaking sick right there. We've made a vowel filter, and a good one, just using the EQ5. If we want, we can move this around too. We can set this into bipolar mode and then have these move all the frequencies. Let's just set it to 12. We know 12 is an octave, so I assume if you set 12 in like anything, it always ends up working out really well. That's just a proverb from me. And you can tell when I start dishing out proverbs, it's because I'm trying to figure out things to say when I'm doing these very mundane tasks. But hopefully you guys are willing to sit through it, because the results are usually pretty freaking cool. Okay, so now so we basically have like a talking filter, and we did that completely on our own, just using a simple format table. Really sick technique, and it's something you guys should look into. This is probably something this is like one of those black magic tricks that people don't typically show because they don't want everyone to realize how simple it is. And as you can tell, it's so simple. It doesn't take a magician to do this. It just takes a tiny bit of knowledge and copying down some numbers. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.